If you're an average movie enjoyer like me, you probably associate the term silent film with the slapstick, over-the-top comedy of Charlie Chaplin or the quiet suspense of Alfred Hitchcock. However, one Chinese silent film stands out from the crowd with its nuanced drama because it has perhaps the most creative use of a soundtrack ever. The Goddess, directed by Wu Yonggang and released in 1934, follows the story of a mother whose only way to support herself and her son is by turning to prostitution. She accidentally gets involved with a mob boss who forces her to work for him, so she decides to secretly save money to send her son to school in the hopes that he can have a better life. This movie has no dialogue and no sound, except for a score by Kevin Perrone added in 2003 when the nearly destroyed footage was recovered and put onto DVD. Perrone's lone piano accompanies all 1 hour and 13 minutes of the film, and if you think Hans Zimmer can write for movies, you haven't seen The Goddess. The first big reason that The Goddess's soundtrack is so good is that it uses the music to augment the emotional journey of anything we see on screen, beyond just leitmotifs and other techniques used in modern cinema. It actually reflects tones of voice to mimic speech, and the intricacies of the music show us exactly what the actors are not just feeling, but thinking. There's a point in the story where a mean neighbor catches her own kids playing with the protagonist's son, and warns them to stay away since he's from a bad family. The music echoes this in such a natural manner, beginning with an upbeat, light melody, hinting at a minor shift when the angry neighbor realizes what's going on, and then bringing in a strong minor bass line as the neighbor shouts at her kids. This then culminates in an emphatic diminished seventh chord that tumbles down as the neighbor's kids look up, see their angry mother, and leave our protagonist's son all alone. Another example of this is later on in the film, where the mother comes back from work with money that she wants to secretly store up for her son, but doesn't know where in her apartment to hide it from the mob boss. As she begins to frantically look around her room, the music rises in tempo, volume, and even key, matching her panic and anxiety. Then, and I think this is the coolest part, the music reaches a climax just moments before the next shot, revealing to us, the viewer, that the protagonist has found her hiding spot, but keeping us in suspense as to where that spot actually is before showing it to us a few seconds later. All of this is done with just a piano. The other thing that I think The Goddess does so well is turn its soundtrack into a foley tool. Foley in cinema is the post-production recreation of sound in a movie scene, like using cellophane to imitate the crackle of a fire or cornstarch to make the sound of snow crunching underfoot. But in a movie where there's no sound, how do you add these kinds of effects? The Goddess managed it with just a piano and a dream. The first example of this is in a scene that begins with the mob boss passed out on a chair and snoring. The low, intermittent trill of the piano creates a cartoonish musical honk shoe that directly mimics the snores of our antagonist and then transitions seamlessly into the rest of the scene. Next, there's a scene where the mother holds her son as he falls asleep, and a gentle series of octave jumps is introduced in the music. The camera then cuts to a close-up of a swinging clock pendulum, at which the music turns sad and contemplative. The octaves both serve as the Foley sound of the ticking clock and as a launch point for the music to move onto the next section. The The final moment of musical foley, and my absolute favorite, is when the piano is used to explicitly show the spread of gossip. I'll show you what I mean. In this scene, the protagonist applauds proudly for her son, who has just finished performing for the school. But her mean neighbor turns to her friends and says, "Do you know what she does for a living?" This bit of gossip is passed down the ladies in the row, spreading like wildfire. The piano recreates this by taking a short melody, representing the gossip, and turning it into a fugue. A fugue, in music, is a contrapuntal composition in which a short melody or phrase, aka the subject, is introduced by one part and successively taken up by others and developed by interweaving the parts. In this scene, the melody is passed around to various octaves and complementary keys as each woman spreads the gossip in her own voice. The music takes this even one step further because the various overlaps of the melody upon itself coincide with the exact pace of gossip as the women turn to and speak over each other. This is the coolest fusion of music theory and the sort of piano pseudo-foley because the classic fugue, which is purely a musical construct, is employed to directly reflect what the viewer would hear in this scene. I don't know about y'all, but I never expected to fall so in love with a silent film. Now don't get me wrong, I like a well-written script and good line delivery too, but something about the Goddess's soundtrack just really stuck with me. I think it's just so creative how the soundtrack works with the film to paint this complicated soundscape full of emotional depth and nuance, and it's only done with one piano. Let me know if you had a favorite example of music use in this film, and special thanks to the Harvard East Asian Cinema Gen Ed for giving me an excuse to make my first ever video essay. If you didn't know, this is for homework.